Get more confidence. Get that promotion. Get moving up the corporate ladder. Get a better gig with an MBA from Mays Business School at Texas A&M University. Whether you're starting out or stepping up, now you can take your career to a whole new level with a full-time MBA in College Station and convenient weekend options at Houston City Center. Texas A&M has a program to suit your schedule. Visit mba.tamu.edu. And gig 'em, Aggie.
Howdy, welcome to May's MasterCast. I'm Shannon Deere, here with your exemplary host, Ben Wiggins.
Oh, that's a good word, Shannon.
I like it.
I like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How are you?
Coming in hot this morning. I liked it.
Trying to bring the adjectives.
Great. Yes, bringing the adjectives, bringing the thunder. I am doing well. Our listeners will hear this a few weeks from now, but the Aggies dominated on Saturday in a way that was really fun to see.
Well, we hope that no matter when you answer that question, that the Aggies dominated this weekend, and no matter when this is released, that's the case. But if not, we might have to revise our national championship hopes. But at this point, I am not liking Kirk Herbstreit as much as I normally do, who did not put us in his top 6, and hoping that we can prove him wrong soon.
Yes. Yeah, we will get the opportunity to. This division is nobody's fool, just as usual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting. Yeah, it's just going to be, do we have enough games to make up for one Alabama loss?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. I mean, against this quality of competition and given how good Alabama is, just like always, yeah, I don't know. Gotta prove it on the field, but
gotta hope a couple of teams lose.
Yeah. I'm very irritated with Notre Dame per usual.
Oh, yes. And I know Clemson wasn't playing with 100% of their roster, so that makes it tougher. But that was brutal.
Yeah, it's tough. But here we are, and it's a beautiful day in Aggieland.
It is, and glad for the football distraction with all else going on in the world. So it's nice. I love it.
Yes.
All right. Today on the show, we have Shara McClure. Shara currently serves as the Divisional Senior Vice President for Texas Healthcare Delivery for BlueCross, BlueShield of Texas. So a very interesting conversation about healthcare and the future of healthcare and the economics of healthcare. We appreciate Shara being on the show. Her focus at BlueCross, BlueShield is to improve and protect the physical and financial health of Texans. As an industry executive, she's committed to lowering healthcare costs. Thank you. We appreciate that. Yes. Improving access and investing in value-based care. Shara uses her platform to inspire women and young professionals to become leaders in their organizations. She is the chairperson of the company's business resource group, which is called Women Improving the Strength of Their Enterprise, or WISE, where she oversees initiatives to promote career, community, commerce, and culture across BlueCross, BlueShield plans in Illinois, Montana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. She also serves on the board of the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce for Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Dallas and Children at Risk North Texas. Shara graduated from Dallas Regional Chamber's Leadership Program in 2017 and is a senior fellow of Houston's American Leadership Forum. Shara is a proud Aggie and holds a bachelor's degree in business analysis from Mays Business School. We are proud to have her as a former student, and she enjoys spending time with her husband and 2 children playing golf and traveling. Welcome, Shara, to the show.
We welcome Shara McClure to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Ben. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
It is our pleasure to have you here. Did you have a nice weekend?
I did. The weather was spectacular. I got to spend a little time outside, and so really enjoyed it.
Where did you go?
Dallas has this park that's built. It's close to downtown, and it's built above a freeway.
Oh, okay.
It's been the source of amazing development. And so I got to go to a social distancing outside event on Saturday night where they had 80s music and just the best weather you can imagine. And I realized I was double booked because the Aggies were beating the hell out of South Carolina. So I had my dad and was watching the game at the same time that I was at this event. It was really special, and it's a great venue for Dallas. It's a really nice asset for us.
It sounds fantastic. And yes, I don't know if that was the single best game of the Jimbo era because if for me it would still be the 2018 bowl game actually when we whomped North Carolina State, which was a legit good team that year. But dang, to win 48-3 in South Carolina, that's a whooping.
It was fun to watch.
Let's talk a little bit about you. What is your favorite superpower?
So if I had a superpower, I mean, this is very healthcare related. I think I would be a healer. I've had some injuries this year.
Okay.
And, I would just have that power. Was it E.T., where they just put their hands on, healed people? And that also reminds me, I mean, we have a lot of superheroes around here that are working in our hospitals and our doctor's offices that are treating people during this global pandemic. And
no question.
People work every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Where did you grow up?
So have you heard of Port Neches, Texas?
Yes. Yeah. Port Neches Groves is the high school I know.
Port Neches Groves. Port Neches is not big enough for its own high school. Groves is not big enough for its own high school. So Port Neches Groves is the common high school there.
Oh, interesting. Okay. How many in your family?
My parents, and then I have a brother, but I have 2 kids of my own.
Yeah.
And earlier this year, I welcomed a grandson. So I'm a granny now.
That is fantastic. What did your parents do and how did that impact you growing up?
My dad was a high school counselor. He retired as a high school principal at Port Neches Groves High School, by the way.
Okay.
And my mother was a teacher. So I went to school every day with my dad and my mom, and I had an aunt that was at the school as well. So, I mean, I couldn't get away with anything.
Yeah, yeah. How do you think your life has been different, and not as a result of having parents that are sort of in very close supervisory positions, but in terms of growing up in, I guess, what you would describe as an academic family?
I think that, well, that's a good question. I mean, they were always very focused on education, certainly educating the people that they were responsible for educating. And they really loved focusing on kids and watching kids learn and watching kids thrive. And one thing that my dad did was he was responsible for trying to get kids into college and get high school kids scholarships. And that's how he got to know Texas A&M. Because that's how he fell in love with Texas A&M. Both of my parents graduated from Lamar University. They were both, had bachelor's degree, master's degrees for their education. But it's that introduction to Texas A&M that my dad developed, in that relationship he developed as a counselor that kind of led me to go to Texas A&M.
That's great. That's great. What did he ever say what it was that he loved about Texas A&M?
Oh, so many things. What's not to love about Texas A&M?
I agree.
The traditions, just the relationships that are built, the value of the Aggie network, the value of the education. I mean, it's been a lifelong journey for me, because not only did I spend my 4 years back in the late 80s there at the business school, but both my kids graduated from A&M, and it's been being an Aggie and being involved has been a lifelong journey for me, which is I've really valued.
Yes. And our most recent guest, depending on this may run out of order, but our most recent guest would love hearing that answer from you, because he is kind of the one who branded the Aggie Network, Porter Garner, with the Association of Former Students, coming up with that way of bringing together what the association does and what former Ags do for each other. That's that was a big thing for him. So I'm really happy to hear you say that, and I'm sure he would be too.
Absolutely. I know Porter well, and I actually serve on the board of directors of the Association of Former Students. And
okay.
I think a lot of the association, and I think Porter's, don't tell him I said this now, but I think Porter's brilliant in the way that he nurtures the culture and really promotes the Aggie network. It's remarkable, like no other school in the country.
I'm meeting with him again in a week, and I will pass along those words despite your orders not to. But give us 60 seconds on your education and your career road.
60 seconds. All right. So when I graduated from A&M, I had an IT degree, and you know what I knew how to do? COBOL programming.
Oh, okay.
It is not, maybe somebody does it anymore, but I was in IT, like a database person. And so my first job was with Price Waterhouse.
Oh.
Doing systems work.
Yeah.
I had met my husband. We had gotten married. I was traveling all the time. And so then I got a job in IT at Prudential Healthcare. And that's when I started my healthcare. That's what took me into healthcare. So after a year or so in the IT department, I posted for an associate manager job. Wasn't the least bit qualified for it, but I got the job anyway. And that's when I started down this healthcare financing path. So I would represent the insurance company negotiating with healthcare providers for prices. So whether it was a surgery center or an imaging center or a hospital, I would kind of work on that contract between the insurer and the provider. Then I went to go work for a hospital system. Then things got a little challenging with raising the kids. So I started my own business and represented some doctors. And after that, I ended up I got to meet some people at BlueCross BlueShield of Texas because I was representing the doctors, negotiating for the doctors with BlueCross BlueShield of Texas representatives, got to know them. And then, 15 years ago, I get the call from BlueCross BlueShield of Texas to go work for them. And so that was in Houston. And it reminds me, 15 years ago, it was around December when I joined BlueCross BlueShield of Texas. And let me tell you a little bit about my first week. And
please, yes.
So I got invited to a Christmas lunch with about, we probably had 50 people, almost all women in this group. And they told me, bring a white elephant gift for the Christmas exchange. I thought, great. I love that. I've been hired into a leadership role. This is great. The white elephant gift exchanges that I had been to were like Young Life white elephant gift exchanges. I mean, you get a piece of junk off the shelf that nobody wants, or you go buy something off the clearance rack that nobody wants. As somebody opens it and they get a big laugh. To me, that's what white elephant gift exchange is. I mean, have you been to those?
Oh yes, very much so. And it seems like among my brother and his frat buddies from back in the day, like the contest is to see who can give it's not actually about the gift that you want. It's about like who can give the gift that is the most challenging to get rid of.
Exactly.
Something like, like a year's subscription to antifreeze on Amazon or something.
Yeah, something like that, or a big can of refried beans, or one time, one of the best ones I had gone to, someone had this soda that was Thanksgiving flavored. So you'd have like a gravy flavored soda and a cranberry flavored soda and a turkey flavored soda. So perfect white elephant gift.
Yes.
So I very carefully picked a white elephant gift. I went to my local Barnes & Noble, went to the clearance rack, and I found a gem. You know what it was? It was a belly dancing kit. You had the little you had instructions on how to do belly dancing. And so I thought, this is going to be a hit at the white elephant gift. I was so proud of my gift. I wrapped it using my gift wrapping skills that I had learned.
It all comes together.
At the department store, wrapped it, took it to the white elephant gift exchange, put it in the pile, and then everybody starts actually opening the gifts. But the gifts were beautiful candles, and here's a Santa yard sign.
Oh no.
Snowflake ornament. I mean, they were actually nice gifts. And so I got so embarrassed that I didn't bring a nice gift. Their definition of white elephant was much different than my definition of white elephant. So I tried to retrieve it.
Okay.
And rejected. They said, no, once you deposit the gift, there is no taking the gift back. So my heart was beating. I was turning red. I was really embarrassed. Somebody actually opened it. It got the laughs anyway, and somebody actually ended up wanting it. So that was the beginning of my career at my current employer.
I heaved a little sigh of relief inside just a moment ago.
It was tense.
It sounds like it. Sounds like it. What? So now you are the Divisional Senior Vice President. I wanted to make sure I got that right, of Texas Healthcare Delivery for BlueCross BlueShield of Texas. What is an average day, an average week, an average month look like for you?
So I work a lot with healthcare providers. So I think I described early in my career, insurance companies have contracts with healthcare providers. And so my job is being responsible for these contracts throughout the state of Texas. And we've got about 500 hospitals in Texas, 50 or 60,000 physicians, over 100,000 healthcare providers. And so I spend a lot of time with on the phone with physicians or hospitals or other types of healthcare providers. We also are very focused on buying care differently. So right now you'll hear this fee for service, where the more services you access, the more the provider gets paid, or the more services are provided to a patient. And so we're trying to innovate in an area called value-based care, where you pay providers differently. You pay providers to help coordinate care, to help be rewarded when they meet quality metrics. And if they do a great job of saving dollars, they might get some shared savings as a result of it. So, it's a lot of working on contractual agreements, a lot of, trying to figure out how do we buy care or pay for care differently. And certainly a lot of WebEx meetings that involve, planning and strategy and encouraging my team.
Yes, indeed. Well, so what I was wondering about is how much of your job is like relationship management and negotiation and all of that versus like the I guess the approach, more sales oriented process of bringing in new providers or I guess this kind of ties back to the first part, and maintaining relationships so that people want to stay. Like, how does that balance out? How much of it is numbers? How much of it is relationships? Does that make sense?
I think that it's probably more influence and relationships. Well, although certainly numbers are important. And so as I've found, and I think a lot of people have understood, that as you advance in your career, at least I can say that as I have advanced in my career, there's kind of this concept of what got you here won't get you there. Right. And so I find that most of my job is it's influencing. It's relationships and the influencing. And sometimes it's influencing externally, but oftentimes it's influencing internally, maybe where we might need to invest in something that will help us in the future.
That makes sense.
Resources or other types of decision making that affect the healthcare expenses of our customers. But I think you were kind of talking about sales. I have a counterpart that's focused on sales, but I do spend a fair amount of time with our employer customers to talk about what's going on in our provider communities.
That makes sense. You were just alluding to customer cost, and there's an affordability crisis happening right now. What do students need to be paying more attention to as they prepare to enter the workforce, especially if they're in the healthcare field or if they're interested in the healthcare field?
Yeah, well, whether you're in the healthcare field or not, you access healthcare. Everybody's a patient.
Sure.
We all have custody of these bodies that we have and want to keep them healthy. But when you referenced it, you used the term affordability crisis, and I think that that's an American issue where healthcare costs are rising much faster than the cost of inflation. We're to a point where our country spends, I think last year it was over $3.6 trillion on healthcare. That's more than real estate, housing, finance. And I think it might be a surprise. When I talk to students and when I talk to a lot of people, I think it's a surprise to them how much of the federal budget and how much costs are tied to healthcare in this country, how much of GDP. So we're at 18% of GDP on healthcare.
Yeah. I mean, it's not super surprising when you like walk it all the way through and think about, if you end up with the worst case scenario in something like, I consumer packaged goods or something like that. Your customer orders a really expensive item and it doesn't work, or it immediately breaks, or it's lost in shipping or something like that. But in healthcare, the worst case scenario is you're no longer with us.
You're no longer with us. You have a long-lasting injury. You have a complication, and I think that can you return that other good? Yeah, can you return? I remember my mother. One thing I inherited from my mother is shoulder problems, and so she's had some shoulder injuries as well. And I remember one time she ended up getting a bill from the surgery. It was covered, but she got a bill that was by accident. It was like $25,000. And I remember her, she couldn't sleep. She was upset. It ended up being a mistake. She didn't owe the money. But I remember her calling me and saying, well, I'm going to tell them they can have their shoulder back.
Yeah. It's a really crazy situation. I worked in health insurance for several years out on the West Coast, and I had a client call me one time and say he got a bill for I don't think it was 100,000 plus. I think it was in the 80s, and I helped him get it figured out with USC, but it was. I remember being on the phone with him, and he told me about the bill, and I remember thinking, you don't sound nearly as concerned as I feel like you should be. Like, this is like a life-altering amount of money, and he was much more chill about it than I was. I was like, I have failed my client. Like I don't know. It was the first call I got like that, and eventually I got to the point where it was, like this sort of thing just happens, and you can usually figure it out. But man. Yeah,
well, he was lucky to have you to help him. But I mean, that's 80,000 or 100,000. I mean, who's going to be able to pay that?
Yeah. No, I don't know anybody who has that sitting around in a mattress.
If they did, would they want to spend it on that?
Right.
One of the 3 grand challenges at Mays is healthcare. We are committed to helping our students understand what the country is dealing with and how it can be most effectively approached as we continue into the 21st century.
I think that the economics, you touched on it earlier, Ben, the economics of healthcare are different than the economics of just about any other industry because it's multi-transactional. You've got an insurance company, you got a patient, you got an employer, you got a doctor, you got a hospital. I mean, it's all, you got a pharmaceutical company. And so I think that Mays is already taking these steps and trying to help students who are interested in a healthcare career, but also the recognition that you don't have to have a healthcare career to experience the healthcare system. Because if you're a chief financial officer, or you're a CEO, or you're a health benefits manager, or you're just choosing how you're going to cover yourself and your family, a basic understanding of how healthcare economics in America is different than economics of other industries, I think is valuable. Getting into health insurance, sometimes we kind of get a bad rap. I don't want to go work for a health insurance company. And I talk to a lot of students or new grads who they feel like, I'm gonna go work for a hospital. I'm gonna do God's work, and they are hospitals and physicians. They're doing great work, but it's also noble to go work in an area that will help this country with one of its biggest economic challenges, and that's the cost of healthcare.
It's funny you say that, because I think that it goes back to the story we talked about earlier. And full disclosure, I didn't want to go work in health insurance sales. It was a job that I got to make ends meet, and it worked with my schedule when I was first in LA. But the opportunity to help people, when I realized that sales done right is not about selling, it's about helping people buy something that will really benefit them. That was one step. And the other step was realizing that you get to be the advocate, kind of like we talked about earlier. And when a person gets a bill that could bankrupt them, you can help show up and make a difference in their life in a very real sense. And that was when those dots all connected, my view on health insurance completely changed.
Well, I think that's a really good point, because there probably aren't a lot of young people who are dreaming of growing up and becoming a health insurance executive, but the way it's hard to get there unless you actually experience it. And so I think that was a great story about how you described helping your friend in this economic crisis that he had.
Yeah. Well, and it part of it is because it's difficult to capture the positive impact of a health insurance process in a quick story or a soundbite. It's always like the soundbite is always, so-and-so lost their house because not health insurance, but so-and-so lost their house because there was a disaster and insurance didn't pay, and like that's the kind of, I feel like that is the story that is unfairly told far more often than the other stories are told. Insurance is a giant industry for a reason. It adds a ton of value.
It does. And it's kind of like you said, like you described, being uninsured is bad, right? You want to be insured. Having insurance is we value as a positive, but then like you said, we don't always hear about the great things that happen that come from being insured. You might hear about the problems, a denial or something that's kind of been painted as a negative.
Yeah. It's we can talk about mainstream media some other time, but you and I spoke a little bit beforehand about the Affordable Care Act, and obviously BlueCross is one of the titans of healthcare, as anyone knows who lives in the Bryan College Station area, for sure. But the Affordable Care Act was a tremendous challenge for you guys at first. What did that look like, and how did you weather it?
So that was a really important part of my career, because, the Affordable Care Act passed in 2010, but the insurance marketplaces or the exchanges were implemented in 2014.
Right.
So between 2010 and 2014, my team and we as a company had to figure out, how are we going to offer more affordable and competitive healthcare plans on the exchanges. And we knew that those might look very different from the typical plans, these large, broad access plans that are offered to the employers that we represent. And so we had to just sit down and figure out, we are still the only carrier in all 254 counties throughout the state of Texas. And when we talk about having contracts with providers, we refer to that as a network. You probably know what a network is, but
yeah.
We kind of went knocking on doors to hospitals and doctors, explaining what this meant to them. And hopefully the value was, as a hospital, if you can convert non-paying, uncompensated patients to those that actually have coverage on the Affordable Care Act, then that should be a net gain. But we had to go out to these hospitals and doctors and ask them, hey, are you willing to take a reduction on the rates that you get paid right now so that we can offer these more affordable premium plans. And that was a hard sell, and not all hospitals and not all doctors agreed to it, but we had to figure out how to have enough of them to completely cover the state of Texas. And what I mean by that is if I get one hospital to agree, I plot that hospital on a map, draw a 30-mile radius around it, and then that's covered. Then I have to keep working on the white space. So covering the entire state of Texas with enough hospitals and doctors and specialists and other types of providers that allowed us to offer a plan to individuals on the healthcare exchange that was competitive was probably one of the biggest challenges that I've faced. And we were unsuccessful in the first couple of years, but the market started stabilizing and we started figuring out how to manage our network in these populations. And now it's a pretty competitive marketplace, and even more competitors are jumping in.
Was there like an aha moment or a breakthrough where you were like, oh, if we did it this way, it can actually work?
So I think those probably came later, because when we were first trying to build this network and explain to providers what this meant, I mean, we had 0 people signed up for it. But then after they realized, oh, people are actually signing up for it, the uninsured rate is going to fall, we're going to have more people covered, then more providers really wanted to jump in and participate.
Makes sense. BlueCross has a $10 million collaboration with the Texas A&M Health Science Center to address access to care in rural communities. What are the most unique aspects of this research?
So that's a collaboration we entered into back in 2018. And one challenge facing Texas is that we've had the highest number of rural hospital closures in the country. I think there have been 20, I might have to fact check this, but I think there have been 20 hospital closures in the past 10 years, and other hospitals that are threatened financially and are at risk of closing. And so when that happens, it really leaves a community without an emergency room. It leaves a community without access to care that they might otherwise need, and they have to travel a long way to get their care. And so this collaboration is about reimagining how we deliver healthcare. And one thing, they've got several projects going on, but one of them is that they established this unmanned exam room in the sheriff's office in Cameron County. And I got to go a couple of weeks ago and actually have a virtual health visit at this health center. And so you swipe your credit card, I think it's $65. You walk in, you've got a screen of a doctor or nurse practitioner in front of you. They check you in. They've got a scale on the floor so that they can get your weight. They've got a blood pressure cuff. They've got an infrared camera that can take your temperature and diagnose other services. They've got a stethoscope and high definition camera that descends from the ceiling. And then after you have your consult, there's a vending machine with 200 of your most commonly prescribed medications that just comes out of a little chute.
Huh.
So this is kind of a cool way that healthcare is delivered. And then after you're finished, I guess this somehow it self-sanitizes, and this UV light completely sanitizes and cleans it for the next person who might want to come in. But is that going to help cure you of your heart attack or your stroke? No, but they had a story of someone who came in with a spider bite and who was able to cure the spider bite. I think there are a lot of things that could be done with this.
And is the doctor or nurse practitioner, this is just a person who's at a different location, or this is like an AI?
Correct. No, it is a person at a different location. So you're actually facing with someone who's taking your vital signs, hearing your chief complaint. If you've got something on your skin, they could put the camera on your skin. Or, it's got some pretty cool diagnostic tools. So it's going to be able to handle quite a few healthcare issues.
Yes, I definitely like that better. I was thinking of like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Can I get my prescription? I'm sorry, Shara, I can't do that. um, so, how does healthcare differ from other industries for women?
Healthcare is dominated by women. If you look at the workforce in healthcare, I know our company is probably over 70, maybe 75% women, and that's very different than engineering that's male dominated, and tech that's male dominated, and oil and gas that might be male dominated. So women are a huge part of the healthcare workforce, and I say that for the insurance industry, but if you went into a hospital or other healthcare providers, maybe it's an ancillary provider or pharmacy, you see a lot of women in the industry. But what we would like to see more of, or what I would like to see more of, is women leadership in the healthcare industry.
That's a theme that keeps showing up, that women have made a lot of progress in the workforce, have made a lot of progress in management, but breaking through the executive barrier seems to be, and especially at the the C-suite level, the CEO level, that seems to be a continuing challenge.
We're seeing changes, just not fast enough.
Yeah.
I think it's exciting. We're gonna have looks like we're gonna have a woman in the White House, or with as a vice president. I think it was just announced that the CEO of CVS is a woman who ascended from CVS's purchase of Aetna. So I think that's now going to be one of the largest companies, Fortune 500 companies, that's led by a female CEO.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think that I know that in my career, I've had to really work on some things to try to help me work in a more of a male executive dominated industry. Mm-hmm. But I think we just kind of need to keep working on it, keep encouraging women, keep educating women at the Mays Business School and in other schools. And I'm hopeful that we'll continue to see changes.
Advancing the world's prosperity. What can we expect to change in healthcare now that we know the outcome of the election, as you mentioned a second ago?
Well, we know the outcome of the White House. We know the outcome of the House of Representatives. What we still don't know is the outcome of who's going to dominate the Senate.
Yes.
And that's key. So if you think back to 2010, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, all three branches, the House, the Senate, and the White House were all majority Democratic. And so that's what allowed the Affordable Care Act to pass. And so I think that Senate race is going to be pretty important as to whether some of Joe Biden's initiatives, like lowering the age of Medicare, like strengthening the Affordable Care Act, like improving subsidies on the Affordable Care Act. I think that with a Democratic majority on the Senate, I think that Joe Biden's going to have a lot of momentum in getting some of those things changed. But if the Senate remains Republican, then I don't know that we're going to see significant changes. You might see fewer challenges to the Affordable Care Act. I know that there's going to be a Supreme Court case heard about the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act this week. We probably won't have a decision until June, but you could potentially have the White House back off on some of those challenges to the Affordable Care Act.
Right. It appears at this moment, Republicans, and this is kind of how it's been for the last few days, if I remember correctly, but Republicans they've called, Republicans will hold 48 seats, Democrats will hold 46. There are two other parties, and then there are, I guess, four that are still sort of TBD. It looks like Alaska, North Carolina, and I don't know. But so
two Georgia Senate races. So there are two Georgia Senate races that are going to a runoff.
That's right. What is the most surprising or counterintuitive advice you would give to young women aspiring to leadership roles?
one thing that I really struggled with as I was kind of learning to influence and growing in my career is the way I presented. So one thing that was just kind of a light bulb for me, I was so focused, and I see this in women now. Let's say you have to give a presentation for a class, or you have to give a presentation for work, or you have to do some public speaking. I mean, I see so many women who are so focused on the content, and they might read what they have to present. And when I finally kind of came to this conclusion, it's less about the content and more about the confidence and the way you come across. That was a big change for me. And so my advice would be, whether it's women or men or whatever, if you're presenting, don't check your personality at the door, and don't worry so much about the exact words you say. Think about projecting yourself and your confidence and how you come across. And part of my challenge, or one thing that was a big wake up call to me, is I was always very nervous presenting. And if I had to present, I always had my notes. Well, when I hit my 40s, guess what? I couldn't see anymore without my reading glasses. And so I had to I'm going to have to figure out how to wing this and do this without my notes. And so to me, that was so counterintuitive to how I had been thinking about presenting and communicating. And so my advice is get over that sooner than I did when I, lost my farsight, my ability to read up close.
Yeah. So
help.
Indeed. To your other point, I think, you're kind of paraphrasing Maya Angelou, how you made them feel. That's what people care about, and instilling that feeling. I mean, it's great advice for women, but it's also great advice for anyone to remember they will absolutely forget the words, and they may forget the words within 5 minutes, but they won't forget how you changed their inner being, the feelings and the emotions that came out of the presentation. Those stay with us so much longer.
Exactly. And if you bore them to death, they won't remember anything.
Yeah, true statement. You're on the boards of North Dallas Chamber of Commerce, Big Brothers and Big Sisters of Dallas, and Children at Risk North Texas. What has been the most rewarding moment of your involvement with these organizations?
So being on boards, I was with Big Brothers, Big Sisters and Children at Risk. Being on boards, a lot of it's about fundraising. It's about learning what the organization does. But one thing I did when I was on Big Brothers, Big Sisters, I decided I'm going to not only just go to the board meetings, I'm going to be a volunteer. Oh. And so I became a mentor to a high school girl during her sophomore year. So once a month, I would actually go to the cafeteria, talk to her about college, talk to her about her future, talk to her about education. And then also we communicated once a week using this platform. And it was all guided conversations, whether it's interviewing or building your resume or applying for financial aid. But getting to know her over those 3 years and being able to talk to her about what it's like to go to college. Here's what it's like to not only go to class, but things that you can get involved in from an extracurricular standpoint. Here's how you can think about your future. Here's what you have to do now to be successful in college, because she graduated in May of this year and is in a university now, but she's a first generation college student, and so being able to mentor her, have that connection, and paint a picture of what she was only imagining was the most rewarding that I've experienced in some of my work.
That's fantastic. Rapid fire. What do you consider your most valuable failure?
So the first time I interviewed for BlueCross, I got turned down. Oh. However, something better came along. I went back at it. Something better came along that was a better fit for me. So
that's great. What is your fondest memory of TAMU?
So I was involved. Do they still have the fellows program at Texas A&M in the business school? When I was in school, they had college business association fellows program. And we had business leaders come talk to us. We actually went on some trips. We got to take a trip to New York. We got to meet T. Boone Pickens. We went to his ranch in Amarillo. And so it was through the business school and just gave me so many experiences that helped me see what a career or future might look like. Because, my frame of reference was my parents, principal and teacher inside a school. I didn't know what it was like to work in a business. And so I got so much out of that program.
Any good bull you'd like to send anyone?
Yeah, so you mentioned my buddy Porter Garner at the association. We talked about women in leadership. There are a couple, Cecily Hurd and Catherine Goyingwade, who are my buddies over there at the Association of Former Students, and I want to send them some good bull.
Fantastic. Good bull to them, and good bull to you. Thank you so much for joining us, Shara. We really appreciate your time.
For our top 3 takeaways, I wanted to start with the Mays Grand Challenges. As we mentioned in the show, one of our Mays Grand Challenges is healthcare. The other 2 are energy and entrepreneurship, which is our great grand challenges to be a part of today in the world, especially kind of that intersection of entrepreneurship and healthcare. It's an interesting time for the innovations that are coming with healthcare. So healthcare is one of our Mays Grand Challenges, trying to make investments there to make sure our students are aware of job opportunities in the healthcare industry, of just what it's like to work in the healthcare industry and how that's unique from other areas of business. In the MBA program, we actually have a healthcare track that students can complete along with the School of Public Health, or as a joint program with the School of Public Health. So pretty cool that we have some opportunities for students to get more versed in healthcare.
Yeah, it's I remember moments of jealousy for our MD, MBA students, and not that I would want to spend necessarily 4 years in medical school, but I think coming to understand those challenges and the way that business interacts with such a huge industry, it's so important. And I think it's appropriate that it is one of our 3 grand challenges. I do think that it is a significant barrier to effective understanding how different business and the function of healthcare can be. And marrying those 2 things in an effective way is, as you said, a challenge.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And going to the second takeaway, I really appreciated some of the advancements in healthcare, or the entrepreneurship in healthcare, the developments that she mentioned, like the UV light and the camera that she talked about.
Yeah, and the AI drone that does the doctoring.
Yeah. I'm not ready for that part, maybe, but I don't know. It does certainly seem like the best combinations are maybe AI and humans, right? That if we could use the data and eliminate some of the human error that can happen when we use machine learning in any aspect of our lives, but certainly could be in healthcare, that there are certainly some benefits there that we're missing out on now, but that we need the human element to still add that expertise or ability to problem solve and think and see the picture that AI might miss. But that combination is exciting.
That you feel that way, Shannon.
Not creepy at all, Ben. Nope, not creepy at all. I know one of the things that will have to happen to make that work is that data will have to improve in the healthcare space. And so that will be a really interesting piece of the puzzle going forward. Dr. Arvind Mahajan, who's the Associate Dean for Graduate Programs at Mays Business School, has coordinated a case competition in partnership with Humana. And there's a large cash prize for the winning group, but it's open to students across the country in business schools. And it's huge. I think there's 1,700 teams or something that participate in it. But the cool thing is they take this data. That one year they took data related to heart attack risk and analyzed that data. So data that really is going to make a difference for people in the healthcare space, but how important that data is. I was listening to a podcast the other day and I don't remember which one it was, so I apologize, but I would guess it was probably Armchair Expert or something like that, knowing what I've been listening to lately. And they were talking about how in America, data is very siloed by different healthcare providers and how healthcare data systems don't communicate across like hospital systems. So I use Baylor Scott & White, and I keep using Baylor Scott & White because they have all of my data. And so I want to look for doctors that are in that network because it's really easy for them to share data. But that sort of is a monopoly on that data of some kind, right? And it is good for them for a business purpose, but problematic for us in this idea that data is going to help us get these clearer perspectives on healthcare because that data is not widely shared or consistent even in how it's formatted and things like that too.
Yes. And while I think our current healthcare system we're moving toward a very good place and, accessibility and all of that, I do think that the democratization or socialization, whatever phrase you want to use for it, for the data itself, for the information that comes out of the healthcare process, I think that it needs to be widely shared and easily accessible. And that's a public issue. It's not a private issue. And I think that even if it takes legislation to get things to where they need to be, I would still be in favor of that.
Yeah. And that brings me to my last point where she said that healthcare is 18% of the GDP. So political opinions aside, and I don't necessarily pretend to have a strong political opinion related to healthcare because I'm not an expert in healthcare. But I think political opinions aside, we can all agree that something has to change and that it's economically important enough that it makes up 18% of our GDP that this is an issue worth working on, an issue worth getting right in the US because we all spend so much money on healthcare. And we've even talked on this show about how I feel like one of the things that stifles entrepreneurship in the US is not having health insurance if you go off and start your own business. Like this fear of not having access to good health insurance makes us more likely to work for big organizations rather than branching off on our own and creating entrepreneurship that might stimulate our economy. So I think there's just a lot to do there that could make it better for people.
Yeah, I agree with that. It is really important to get these questions right. And it's kind of like you said earlier, the business aspects and the medical aspects, continuing to create a holistic understanding of how those parts of the industry play together is vital to the future of the American people and people around the world.
Yeah, I agree. Do you want to close us with a quote?
I would love to close us with a quote, and it's a quick one today. A camel is a horse that was designed by a committee. Sir Alec Isagonis.
All right. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.
An MBA from Texas A&M University can take your career to a whole new level. With full-time and weekend options, Texas A&M suits your schedule. So get a better gig. Visit mba.tamu.edu.
Looking to start a podcast? Trying to tackle questions like, how do I record? How do I edit? How can I get music for my show? What equipment do I need? How do I distribute it? Good news. The podcast architects are here to help, whether that's from start to finish, fixing the audio quality, helping you get the episodes posted. Go to podconsulting.co. Everyone has something worth sharing with the world.